I've worked in deep-sea biology for 11 years. I've tagged hammerheads in hurricane seasons, been belly-deep in Antarctic krill migration data, even swam alongside pilot whales during calving season. I've slept in wet lab chairs for weeks on end, eaten freeze-dried noodles more times than I should admit, and sat in silence for hours listening to hydrophone recordings, praying they picked up something, anything. But nothing in all those years prepared me for what happened to Florence. She was one of ours. A blue whale, 81 feet long, gentle, ocean-worn, and impossibly graceful. We tagged her 3 years ago off the coast of New Zealand, during a Pacific migration study sponsored by 3 universities and a private donor with a shiny logo he wouldn't stop mentioning. She was our crown jewel, not just a specimen, but a story. Florence survived an entanglement with fishing gear as a calf. She carried scars like winding tattoos across her flank. She traveled across hemispheres, carried data, sang through the ocean. She was part of the team. We heard her sing dozens of times. And then one day, she was gone. I remember staring at the monitor, coffee going cold in my hand. 1 minute, her signal was pinging along its usual route, steady as ever. The next, it just vanished. No distress signal. No slow descent. 1 frame, signal green. Next frame, silence. It wasn't just dead. It was deleted. Wiped. I blinked at the screen for 30 seconds before I even moved. Ran the data several times. Refreshed the interface. Pulled backup logs. Nothing. Florence's tag, ID, was simply gone. Not offline. Erased. At first, we thought it was equipment failure. Salt water could sneak into even the toughest casings. A faulty battery. A glitch. But something scratched at me, slow and persistent, like the barnacles on her tail. Somewhere deep inside, past all the data and the training and the protocols. I knew better. And I wasn't the only one. Jamie, our sonar tech, was the first to say it out loud. We were seated around the table in the dry lab of the Odysseus, our research vessel. Morning fog hung outside the portholes like old breath. Jamie was barely on her second coffee. She didn't die, she muttered, eyes unfocused. You guys don't get it. Something took her. Everyone went quiet. Malik, ever the rationalist, snorted. Took her? Jamie, she's 170 metric tons. What, exactly, do you think could have taken the largest mammal on Earth? But Jamie didn't smile. She didn't argue. She just turned her laptop toward us and replayed the last sonar return. There it was again, that tiny moment of hesitation. Florence's signal, constant as a heartbeat, fluttered, not with distance, not interference, but with interruption. Something intersected her space. Instantaneous. Silent. Look at the waveform, Jamie whispered. That's not a drop-off. That's a cut. Outside the porthole, drizzle tapped on the glass. That was the moment I felt it. The swallowing quiet that creeps under your skin, a kind of pressure, like knowing someone's standing behind you in the dark and too afraid to turn around. The ocean didn't just lose one of its own. It was hiding something. 3 hours later, we got something worse. An automated recon buoy, 300 kilometers off the coast of Arica, Chile, pinged Florence's original tag frequency. Only, it wasn't Florence. It was a ghost signal. A hollow, mechanical echo of her song, digitally deformed, twisted at the edges, transmitted from 5 miles deep above the Peru-Chile trench. No whale could survive there. There's no sunlight. The pressure's enough to crush steel. It might as well be another planet. But the coordinates were perfect. Triangulation confirmed. Down there, in the abyss, something was pretending to be her. Or mocking her. We double-checked the data. Triple-checked. Sent it to 3 labs. All had the same conclusion. The tag we lost hadn't failed. It had been reactivated, deep in the trench. That's when we called the dive crew. I signed the clearance request with shaking hands. It was a decision I'd live to regret. Or maybe not live through at all. There's an old saying among deep-sea people. Down there, what you don't know can kill you. But what you do know, it'll haunt you even worse. We thought we knew the trenches. We thought we knew the whales. We were wrong. Florence wasn't the first thing to vanish down there. And she wouldn't be the last. But she was the first thing we named. And when it swallowed her whole, I think it learned ours. The ocean is quiet in ways the surface world can't understand. Down there, 5,000 meters beneath the skin of the Earth, the water feels heavy with thought. Everything is slower, thicker. You begin to wonder whether sound itself gets tired that far down, whether it too decides to just glide along in silence. We left port 2 days after Florence's ghost ping. Odysseus pushed into the Pacific under a bloated sun, with tension hanging off every metal rail and bolted hatch. Captain Alvarado barely slept. She didn't say much on the bridge, but I could tell from the way her eyes flicked toward the deep-sea mapping systems every few minutes. I couldn't blame her. The Peru-Chile trench isn't just deep, it's uncharted in all the wrong ways. Over 8,000 meters down in places. Construction collapse zones. Pressure spikes. Places where pressure bends rock and physics goes soft around the edges. It's called the Atacama Graveyard by old marine navs, not because of ships, but because of signals that get lost and never come back. We dropped out the first hydrophone rig on day 3. Jamie ran lines back into the server decks, all green. But when she handed me the headset, I heard nothing. No well clicks. No sonar sweeps. Just this low, distant throb, like concrete settling against the weight of water. It pulsed once every 14 seconds. Almost like a heartbeat. Mechanical, but off. Not regular. Could be undersea tectonics, Malik offered, adjusting the signal processing gain. Subduction zones echo back through the water like that. But there was something else in the signal, something just beneath the noise floor. Layers. It wasn't one sound, it was a stack of them. Vibration inside of vibration, like someone speaking in 100 voices at once, just out of sync. Jamie started scanning minute-long loops. Pulled a spectrogram. Tilted her head. Guys, I think it's changing. We watched the waveform on-screen morph, slowly forming peaks and valleys that resembled shapes. Intentional patterns, like language. It got worse. We powered up Alvin 6, our longest-range submersible drone, and dropped it into the trench wrapped in reinforced carbon plating and designed for 9,000-meter pressure tolerance. It carried sonar arrays, low-light vision, manipulators, and a black box transmitter. Descended cleanly. 100 meters, 500, a kilometer. We watched through the live feed as the blue turned dark blue, then black. Pancake sea cucumbers waddled across ghostly sediment. Jellyfish finned through folds of water too dark for God to see. Then, the camera blinked. Just once. A stutter, 2 frames of nothing. Then it came back. Jamie frowned. Static? No, that looked like a system reboot, said Nina, our engineer. But nothing on the logs. 2,000 meters. Florence's last ping was at 2,700. That was when Jamie's console lit up with a sonar contact. Alvin just pinged mass, she called. Dead ahead. Mid-frame. It's wide. Really wide. I leaned in. But the screen was all black. No return. Just bald shadow. Alvin's forward sonar was screaming its lungs out, sending pulses every 2 seconds into the water. They just didn't come back. It was like sonar disappeared inside the shape. Could be gas pocket? Malik offered weakly. Gas doesn't absorb sonar like that, Jamie replied, voice tight. Nina ran diagnostics on the drone. Everything checked out. No mechanical error. No software glitches. So, what the hell were we looking at? Alvin ticked down. 2,700 meters. It was there we found the first sign of Florence. Not her, not a body, but the tag. Somehow, it blinked red in the silt, jammed into a piece of tissue. Meat. Striated, glistening tissue, like marine muscle, but impossibly dense. Thick as steel, smooth as ice, but visibly warm. Alvin's manipulator brushed it. And then the camera feed died again. This time, for 10 seconds. When the feed blinked back on, the tissue was gone. So was the tag. Drone recall. Captain Alvarado ordered instantly. We don't know what's down there. Jamie was typing like her fingers had caffeine poisoning. No response. Drone's not acknowledging. Pressure resistors are still intact, but the signal's not reflecting. Emergency recall. Pull it back. Malik snapped. I'm trying. It's like it's under command lock. That was the phrase that silenced the deck. Command lock. There's no such function in Alvin 6. It's manual return or auto surface if comms are lost. We all turned at once to the screen. There, on sonar, just behind where Alvin had hovered, a new shape appeared. It didn't rise. It uncurled. Jamie said it first, almost whispered. That's not a structure. The sonar returned a reading the size of a cathedral, but without edges. Rolling, pulsing sides. Reading is part solid, part void. Like there was a hole that had a body. Then we lost Alvin. No cut signal. No warning. No high-pressure implosion report. It just stopped broadcasting. Gone. We stared at the blank feed and watched the sonar marker fade from screen. That's when the hydrophone signal changed again. From a distant pulse to a long, melting moan. It wasn't animal. It wasn't mechanical. It was like someone remembering pain. I stepped outside after that. Top deck. Stared off the railing into night water, so still it looked laminated. Sky full of stars behind the fog. No wind. No waves. Just me and the dark. And still, somehow, an itch in my jaw. Like pressure deep in the roots of my back teeth. It wasn't until 2 hours later that Jamie showed us her processed reading. What I thought was noise the pulse. It wasn't random. It was structured. In fact, it mimicked something pretty closely. I ran a pattern check. Theo, she said, voice low, like it hurt her to say it. That moan? The frequency? Cadence. I leaned forward. She didn't look up as she whispered. It's almost perfectly identical to Blue Whale's song. Only inverted. We initiated descent protocol at 0430 hours. We were no longer passive observers. We were explorers now, or maybe intruders. With Alvin, 6 lost, and the Florence tag rerouted deeper than any signal should survive, we had to go after it. Captain Alvarado gave us 2 hours to prep the Odysseus's secondary manned sub, Hermes, a 3-person vehicle only used for trench surveys or extreme extraction missions. Over 9,000 meters of depth tolerance. Just barely. Jamie opted out. Said she wasn't interested in meeting the thing that swallowed sonar like soup. Instead, Nina and Malik volunteered, and I, against my better judgment, joined them. Within 30 minutes we were strapped in, airlocked, and pushed from the Odysseus's sub-bay into the dark, humming mouth of the trench. The lights dimmed around us fast. They always do this far down. But this time, the black felt different. It wasn't absence. It was density. Even at low ambient pressure, I felt a strange static crawling the back of my neck, like hairs standing inside my skull. There was no sound, not even cavitation, just the creaks of metal and the click of our internal comms. Descent passing 1,000 meters, Nina reported from the NAV panel. Signal is stable, sonar bounce slow but steady. Copy that. I replied, gripping the armrest too tight. We were sailing into void. At 1,500 meters, pressure tightened around the cabin like a fist. Not dangerous. Just aware. Nina frowned at the engineering console. I'm seeing minor anomalies along the EM shielding. Malik leaned in. Burn through. No. Modulation offset, like fluctuations in resonance. Simple explanation? Ambient fields from seafloor formations. But the realists in us couldn't help but go silent. Because resonance like that usually meant feedback. Like returning sonar from another source. Something was responding. 2,200 meters. The first sonar echo came back with something strange. Biological mass. Not rock. Not metal. Not anything in standard classifications. But it didn't stay consistent. The sonar readings flickered, like static across a radio. 1 minute showing tendrils or limbs, the next moment, nothing. Malik recalibrated everything, glued to the screen. His voice, normally smooth, now hollow. The data keeps rewriting, like it's being edited. I tried to focus, but something about the pressure curve felt off. My ears didn't pop. My chest was tight. I kept blinking, struggling to focus my eyes, like watching a 3D movie without the right glasses. Anyone else having visual distortion? I asked. Yeah, Nina replied. Everything's blurry, like heat waves or depth warping. That's not equipment, Malik muttered. That's us. At 2,700 meters, we found something. Not something. A graveyard. Our lights caught on a field of floating debris, organic and artificial all mixed together. A giant net of shredded tissue and wrenched metal. A nightmare of bone splinters, biopsy cables, long-dried cartilage, decayed hull plating, and impossibly, a tag collar. Florence's. There was no whale left. No body. No skeleton. Just the rip-proof carbon ring floating in silence, as if someone placed it there. That wasn't the worst part. Not by a long stretch. Nina turned the lights 10 degrees lower and illuminated faces. Dozens of them, stretching into the gloom. Fish. Whale calves. Octopuses. Eels. All of them preserved, floating frozen just outside our light cone. Not decomposing. Just held there. as though they were caught between the moment of death and something worse. Their eyes weren't milky or stormed by pressure implosion. They were clear, almost watching. I think we've crossed into an event anomaly, Malik breathed. Eh, what? I asked. Localized physics failure. This is what neutrino fields would look like if weaponized. Weaponized? God, we were barely holding on to reality ourselves. I blinked, and the faces were closer. Not by much. Inches maybe, but closer. Ascend. Now, I said, trying not to panic. But Nina was pale now. I can't. The ballast isn't responding. Control node's frozen. I wanted to scream, but Malik grabbed my arm. Look. He pointed at the view window. Blackness. Then motion. Something unfurled just beyond the beam of our drone lights. A silhouette that wasn't a silhouette. Curves that didn't obey geometry. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of overlapping surface layers like a recursive organism folding in on itself. The creature was vast, impossibly vast, but also unreal, shifting angles when we didn't look directly at it. Like our brains couldn't lock onto it fully. Then it moved. It didn't swim forward. It simply became closer, without closing the space between. Just there. The glass trembled. I could feel it inside my chest, whispering below the range of sound. Nina's fingers pressed hard on the manual override. Ballast override, come on, come on. Then, the power died. Pitch dark filled the submersible. I felt breathing that wasn't ours, like we were sharing the capsule with something else. And then, the light started coming back. Only through the passive osmotic hull layer. Soft. Blue. Pulsing. Rhythmic. Not from our lights. What are we seeing? I asked, though I already knew. Bioluminescence. But not random. It was organized. Glyph-like. Thousands of neural-like nodes across the creature's skin, blinking in a mathematical sequence. Not a warning. A message. It's talking to us, Malik whispered. No, Nina said. It's recording us. I felt it then. Recognition. It knew about Florence. It knew about us. It was learning. Mapping. Modeling. Not just who we were, but how we thought. Then I stopped breathing for a second as I realized. In one tiny corner of its skin, just one section of light, I saw a perfect replica of Florence's vocal waveform. Not data. Not mimicry. Memory. Hermes shuddered. And we began to ascend, but not under our control. It was letting us go. We resurfaced 12 hours later, 30 miles east of Odysseus's last ping. Radio functionality was dead. No GPS. Just static. But we were alive. And that, somehow, felt like the worst part. It's been 2 days since we came back up. 2 days since Hermes resurfaced like something expelled from the deep. 2 days since the Odysseus failed to answer our return beacon. At first, we thought it was positioning error, or that comms were misaligned due to drifting too far east. But Odysseus wasn't there. Not on GPS. Not on sonar. Not even on the surface. Gone. Vanished. Just sea and silence. Malik laughed when we first realized it. Not because it was funny, but because we were terrified. Nina sat shaking in the pilot's chair, her nails digging into the fabric like she needed to anchor herself to something. We floated helplessly for 12 more hours before a response finally came. A faint blip on the radio. Then another. Multiple NAV pings, dozens, hundreds. But they weren't contact signals. They were reflections, bounced back at us with a 5.6-second delay. Identical. Our own signal. Over and over. As if the ocean was testing us. Rehearsing what we sounded like. Like it was learning how to lie. Eventually, Odysseus found us. Or maybe we found it. The ship emerged through heavy fog as if it had been there the whole time. Wrong angles through the mist, outline jagged, rear stabilizers slightly damaged, though no collision had occurred to explain it. We docked in near silence. Malik scanned the outer hull. Partial corrosion. Salt bloom in patterns that didn't match turbulent stress. Nina said it looked like the ship had aged months while we were gone for hours. Inside, things were worse. The lights were dimmer. The air cooler. And the equipment on board strange. Screens frozen mid-scan. Cameras pointed at blacked-out corners of the lab where no one worked. Motion sensors blinking in unoccupied hallways. The med bay was empty. Jamie's station showed signs of a coffee spill, but no mug. Her sonar logs from earlier that day missing. Out on the deck, there were small footprints in the mist. Bear. Children. But there had never been children on board. This isn't the Odysseus, Malik whispered as we walked the empty hallway that pulsed slightly underfoot, like pressure breathing through carbon fiber. What are you talking about? It's not the same ship. It has to be. No. It's close. But it's copied. He touched a hand to the wall and flinched. It's still calibrating. He was right. There were errors. The map of the ship on the NAV console showed an extra room on C deck. Storage bay 4B. But there is no 4B. I checked with Nina. We went down together. And we found it. No tools inside. Just standing water and a dried piece of baleen. With Florence's ID tag, 0037FJ, embedded in the center. Nina began dreaming about her face melting into whale song. She didn't say it like a metaphor. She meant it literally. Every time I blink, I hear it singing back. Inside me. Like my jaw remembers her. Malik wouldn't enter the lab anymore. Not physically. He watched the monitors from the comms room. To distance himself, he said. He kept repeating something under his breath. This is recursion. Recursion. It's learning in loops. Late that night, I found him tracing a spiral into the frost on the observation deck's glass. The center was empty. Dead. After that, he stopped answering questions. I started hearing Florence's call in the ceiling panels. Not from speakers. From the vibration in the metal hull. The song condensed into mechanical wavelengths, encoded in the structure of our environment. It wasn't communication. It was reconstruction. Not just of her. Of everything we'd touched. Relived. The lights began to flicker in a steady tri-tap pattern. Jamie used to do that when testing subsurface comms. But Jamie wasn't here anymore. Nina came up behind me while I watched the lab monitors. Theo, there's something moving on sonar. Whales again. No, too slow. She showed me. Something massive was crawling along the seafloor. Slow. Deliberate. Mirrored sonar gave it a profile size of 2.3 kilometers across, pulsing and rotating at multiple angles simultaneously, each frame impossible geometry. Malik finally broke down at 4 o'clock. We heard the scream echo through bulkheads. Found him clawing at his scalp in the med bay. I can't delete the shape. I can't make it go away. His pupils had started dilating unevenly. When we sedated him, he whispered, "It knows our names now." That night, the sky glowed. Not lightning. Not cloud. A hemisphere of green-black aurora bloomed upward from the ocean, like something beneath the water had begun rewriting the sky itself. Nina and I watched it twist, pulse, breathe, and then collapse. The lights on the ship went out. Entirely. Pitch black. We stood there for what felt like hours as sounds. Not sonar or whale, but voices from places we couldn't place echoed inside the ship's steel bones. Jamie's voice. Jamie, who wasn't here. Saying words we never heard her say. Drenched in reverb. Like memories mimicked by something that never forgot. Nina didn't wake up the next morning. I found her bunk empty. No signs of forced exit. No logs. No sounds. Just a wet footprint on the floor. Not shoe. Not human. Long ridged toes, smooth heel. Too large. Too strange. Her necklace was coiled on the pillow, chain woven into the symbol Malik had drawn on the frost. That was when I started seeing the impossible lights. Not from above, but beneath us. Late that evening, I returned to the observation deck, alone. The fog parted, and when I looked down into the trench, I saw it. A grove of glowing blue bioluminescence, shaped like neurons. A forest of synapses beneath the ocean, stretching miles along the floor. Connected. Pulsing. Alive. And within it bodies. Not intact. Not butchered. But assembled. Flesh organized like memory. Extracted. Rearranged. Woven with precision. Not decorations. Not leftovers. Blueprints. The sea was not empty that night. It never had been. We just hadn't come far enough to hear it breathing. It begins with a pulse. One deep throb reverberating through the hull. Not a sound, a presence. Felt in the teeth. In the bones. The waveform isn't even measurable. It has weight, like the mass of a thought dropped into water, rippling outward into the fabric of everything. I was in the communications bay when the lights flickered again, not that it mattered. The monitors had long since devolved into scrambled loops. Footage no longer played in real time, but as if stitched from what might happen soon. Voice logs started playing backward. Nina's voice. Over and over. I don't think it kills us. I think it integrates us. At 2 o'clock, the temperature inside Odysseus dropped below 9 degrees Celsius. Our environmental controls showed everything nominal. But my breath turned to fog. I grabbed the bulkhead for balance and realized the metal was pulsing under my hand. It was warming in sequence, like a heartbeat. Not ours. Captain Alvarado finally returned. Or maybe something wearing her face did. I found her standing barefoot in the observation deck, staring at the trench, not at the sea, but past it. Skin gray, eyes glassed over. Around her neck, twisted tightly, was part of Malik's sensor cable, frayed and fused with patches of flesh, like it had grown into her. She turned her head toward me, not fast, not slow. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Until the floor spoke. A sound rose not from her chest, but from beneath my feet. A voice, deep and wrong and bottomless. Brutal in its stillness. Identity collated. Boundaries absorbed. We see you clearly now. My vision began to fracture. Not like going blind, but like seeing too much. Layer upon layer of overlapping shapes filled the bridge, as if reality had slipped a second layer of glass over everything. Shadows with mass. Depth without location. There were eyes in the walls. Not looking at me, remembering me. Eyes made from bioluminescent tissue, glimpsed and forgotten every time I blinked. Then came the call, just like with the Chronos logs. Except this wasn't sonar. And this wasn't recorded. It was entering our minds. A direct neurological broadcast, using our own patterns against us. The frequency of trauma. The vibration of love. The resonance of regret. And it spoke again. Florence was integration phase 1. You were phase 2. We reassemble. Memory. Motion. Meaning. Human language is inefficient. Your structure is acceptable. I staggered back and collapsed near the emergency ballast lever. But the ship didn't sway anymore. We'd stopped floating. We were anchored. Something, tentacles, appendages, limbs, had risen from the trench and were wrapping themselves around our vessel. Not stylized like kraken myths or smooth sea monster limbs, but layered spirals of vascular brain matter, luminous eye stalks, jelly-like muscular fibers sliding over our hull. The Odysseus let out a groan I had never heard before. Like steel confessing. Test of self has concluded. Reflex adequate. Fear consistent. Preservation relevant. You will be processed. Malik joined us mid-hallway. Or what was left of him. He was leaking light. Literally. Bioluminescence leaked from under his fingernails. Veins glowing blue-white like sea gods had gathered inside his blood. He was whispering a single phrase, over and over. I never stopped loving her. I never stopped loving her. Who? I asked, though my voice barely escaped. Florence, he said, eyes dead. We made her part of us. Tracked her. Controlled her journey. And now, she's just broadcasting through something bigger. Something began unfolding beneath the ship. Something truly enormous. Not one organism, but an architecture. An entity with a nervous system that spans the trench floor. A symbiotic collective of life forms woven into an awareness network. Its skin was coral. Its nerves were electrical impulse coils. Its spine was sediment. And it had learned from us. From our instruments. From our signals. From Florence's brainwaves. From our fears. Because the sea had always been listening. The floodlights reactivated in one massive burst. And through the OBS deck window, we saw its eye. Or something shaped like one. 5 stories tall. Not blinking. Just watching. And in that moment, I heard it. Not sonar. Not words. Self. It forced something into my brain. Not information, but experience. Memories not mine. Whales feeding in ancient seas. Ships crumbling under pressure 30,000 years before steel. The slow awareness of others. And then us. One tagged blue whale. A harpoon. A sonar beam. A response. We had verbalized ourselves into the deep. And it had translated our existence into an invitation. There was never infection. It said through the walls of my skull. Only reception. The room bent. Time folded. I fell, but not physically. My identity fractured. Something was peeling me. Digitizing emotions and fears. Chunking me into symbolic memory packets. Your species misidentified the ocean as alien, it said. But we were born in the same womb. From the black pressure and slow waves. You are not foreign. You are uninformed. I screamed. And something screamed back. Not angry, but grateful. I found the dead man's switch. The one Nina talked about rigging if things ever got too far. The pressure charge was wired to the engine's oxygen converters. It wouldn't kill the creature. How could it? But it might destroy the Odysseus. And I thought perhaps, if we were carriers now, that might be necessary. But then, the voice whispered again, "We are departing. We have enough. Transmission is complete." The lights dimmed. The tentacles released. The Odysseus rose. By itself. Drifted upward like a balloon in slow current. I collapsed beside a bulkhead, vision swimming. The last thing I saw, on the deck, scratching itself into the condensation of the window, was one word: remember. We were picked up days later. Just me. No crew. No logs. No trace of Odysseus's former mission profile. The ship was listed as return with no deployment. The team reviewing my incident report called it hallucination caused by isolation, oxygen deprivation, and sonar-induced trauma. Jamie, Malik, Nina, Alvarado never registered on the crew manifest, they said. I asked what supposed project I was even working on down there. They said they had no record of me deploying to that sector. But I know better, because I still hear it. The pulsing. Every night. In my bone marrow. The thing in the trench. The architect. The symbiotic womb. The entity of pressure. It didn't just learn our names. It learned our language. And it's waiting. For others. They found me adrift 72 nautical miles south of the Atacama graveyard. Floating. Alone. Unconscious in an empty life raft that shouldn't have existed, attached to a subdesign that went out of commission 10 years ago. My clothes were wet but warm. No wounds. Just salt-stained eyes and fingertips so pruned you'd think I'd drowned and come back up different. They brought me to a Chilean naval base. Asked me my name. I gave it. None of it matched their records. No mission file. No Odysseus. No Florence. I was listed as inactive. Officially on academic sabbatical from my university position in San Diego, conducting some literature review I never filed. They asked if I'd maybe suffered a neurological episode, oxygen starvation, nitrogen narcosis, isolation psychosis. All the boxes they checked right before checking you out of the story. They let me go after a week, under psychiatric watch. I've been out for 3 months. 3 months of white walls, clipboards, and compassionate but firm smiles. I tell my story again and again. They think if I repeat it enough I'll hear how crazy it sounds. I work as a deep-sea researcher. We lost a whale, and we followed her into the abyss. That's usually the part where they exchange looks. They gave me a room in a coastal rehab facility. Nice view. 2nd floor. Great lighting. The nurses are kind. They think I'm getting better. They keep saying I'm safe now. It's funny. Safe feels like something missing. Like oxygen just before suffocation. I tried to reach Nina's family. No record of her in the marine database. No school records. No publications. Even her thesis is missing. Every fingerprint of her existence, scrubbed. Malik? Same. Alvarado? Non-existent. Jamie, the sonar tech? I don't even know anymore. I think maybe she never existed. Or maybe they were downloaded like viruses into memory just long enough to guide me. To watch what I'd do. To record my choices. I've started to dream about Florence again. But in the dreams, it's not her. It's something using her voice. Something that speaks just outside my hearing. Sometimes I wake up and the room is filled with the smell of salt and chlorophyll. One night, the mirror reflected water around my face instead of walls. Another night, my phone screen flickered to life on its own, displaying Florence's tag ID, and then switched to a live sonar waveform I know shouldn't exist. Just once. For 5 seconds. Then, static. Last week, someone left a flower on my windowsill. Bright white. Bioluminescent at night. It wasn't native to the region. I turned it in. The lab called back saying it had no known chloroplast structure. Synthetic perhaps. Likely a prank or prosthetic plant. They said it glowed in patterns. Like a heartbeat. I checked out of the facility 2 days later. Signed the forms, smiled, nodded. Told them I was heading inland. I went straight to the nearest harbor instead. Rented a small engine boat. Took it out 5 miles, anchor dropped. Just me. And that same calm sea. The vibration is stronger now. Not noise. Memory. Alive in my bones. I think it's been growing me into something else. Something ready for phase 3. Not just reception. Not just response. Replication. That's what it wanted, in the end. Not just to understand us. Not to destroy us. To use us. Virus wraps around host. Light stores itself in salt. Shape learns how echo works. We taught it fear. Language. Pattern. We taught it names. And now it whispers them back. Late at night. Through water lines. Through pipes. Through dreams. I asked if they got any other signals on that trench route. The naval records showed nothing. But under the table, a man in gray, no name, handed me a silent photo. 5 dots. 5 clicks on Sonar. Deep, deep under the Marianas last week. Identical rhythm, but mirrored. A new loop. That's not where it began. That's where it's going next. I stare at that photo every day now. Sleep less. Eat worse. I think I'll return to sea soon. People say I need help. They're right. But not the kind they mean. I need to hear it again. I need to know if it still remembers me. If it'll take me fully this time. Because I've started to change. Tiny things. Small rhythms in my breathing. Flashes of something else's thoughts. I'm not sure whose body this still is. And the worst part is, I'm starting to feel grateful. I work as a deep-sea researcher. I say it again sometimes when I wake up, like an anchor. But every day those words get lighter. Less true. More observed. Soon, they'll belong to something else entirely. Something that wears my voice. And when the next team dives too deep and finds a whale with the faint outline of a tag collar grown from skin, or hears its own sonar echo made seconds before it actually pings, they'll know. We were just the prototype. The ocean never needed our permission to listen. It just needed a name to start with. And now, it has mine.